Good afternoon, good afternoon. Grab a seat. I get a chance to introduce a very, very dear friend of mine. I've known him over 20 years. Started his firm in 1992 and built it into one of the leading medtech, life science, bioscience search firms in the country. He's been featured on, let's talk about that. Been featured on CNBC, the Wall Street Journal, MX Magazine, MDDI Magazine, and obviously various other publications concerning the search and staffing industry. Joe is definitely a first mover in the digital storytelling world. And he's gonna be able to talk to you a little bit today about that, whether you're a 4-person office or a 104-person office, and why that's real important. It really ties back into the comments this morning when we opened the meeting, as well as Mark talking about change. So, it's my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine, Mr. Joe Mullins.
What's up, buddy? Thanks. Let's have fun. Well, thank you so much for having me, Bert. I'm pumped. This is home for me. When I got here last night, it did feel like I came home. A lot of the people that have been around the organization for a long time came right up to me, and it was super. I joined MR in '89 as an owner, actually as an AE first. And somebody reminded me last night, I've been in the organization much longer than that. My dad was Art Sheehan, Pat and Art Sheehan. And I remember as a kid coming home, listening to them talk about IORs and things of that, and I had no idea what they're doing. So this is home for me, and I'm super excited to be here. So I'm gonna share things with you, and I've sat and I still sit in the desk that you sat in as an MR AE and an MR franchise owner. And so let's see, where are we here? Great. So my journey with developing marketing forward first strategy at a desk level and an office level started in 2015. Google and Johnson & Johnson were building, and still are, what is the most sophisticated, robust surgical medical device platform of all time. It was a $1 billion joint venture, and they were evaluating 27 different firms to pull this off. They had said that they wanted to hire 250 people in a 30-month period, and they only wanted the best of the best. So we ended up winning that contract. It was a big contract. We were excited, and they said, we want people from Tesla, we want people from Apple, Microsoft, LinkedIn, UI, UX people, software controls, scientists in the Bay Area. And so the CEO at that time sitting across the table from me, and he's like, you got this? And I did what every carnivorous, red-blooded headhunter would do. I said, yeah, I got this. And so on the way home, when I got hold of myself, I knew I had to have a new point of view on doing this business. There was no possible way. Remember, I had been in the business for 20 plus years. There was no way, if you did the math, you could pull this off, and I didn't crush my office and lose all my other clients. We've all been there. We've had the whale of a client that we begged for, we get it, and when they end up having more than 30% of the business in your office, you really put your organization at risk. So I knew I had to come up with a new way. Just doing the math backwards, let alone being in the Bay Area, you can't reload people in there, getting 250 people and putting it at the bar that Google and J&J put it at. So I think all great headhunters have a fascination with human behavior. And I know I do. And I had realized that the influence that was taking place in the world we live in today occurred on social platforms. We've even had a president elected because of a social platform. Like or dislike what's going on today, it's the world we live in. So we started thinking, we said, you know what? Why don't we develop a hiring narrative that we would deploy on social platforms, and in particular, the social platform today we're going to talk about is LinkedIn, because it really is the social platform. And I'm not a shill for LinkedIn, but it's the one we're using. And we decided we were going to develop a hiring narrative. We were going to tell a story about this client, the project they're taking on. But we couldn't, they wouldn't let us talk about the robot. They wouldn't let us allow people to interview and come into the back room of Google, so I didn't mention that in the beginning. Can't talk about the robot, can't show the robot, and I can't show you the engineering. But you can sit in this 12 by 12 room, and by the way, after 1 p.m. it got really hot in there, and we wanted you to come to work there. So we had to develop this hiring narrative. And what happened during that time was we started to develop a branding situation. And the people who worked for me didn't believe it was going to happen. They trusted me implicitly. And they trusted me, and I want to pause here because when I thought about Bert this morning in his opening comments, there were two characters that were sitting in the audience. The first character, the one who was sitting up straight and leaning in to what Bert was saying, and believed and trusted in leadership. And then there was the other one that was squirming around in their seat. They either didn't believe or they didn't trust, but they for sure were uncomfortable. And a leader cares more about your personal growth and your professional growth than they do about your comfort. And so myself as a leader, my entire organization was incredibly uncomfortable with this approach of betting the business on social platforms. But because of my responsibility, I did not care about them being comfortable. I cared about them growing and being successful. And I reminded them that if you thought it was crazy that I built a business on social platforms, I said, you're calling the kettle black. Think about what we do for business, just for a second, and it's created hundreds of millionaires in this room. You, a stranger, call up another stranger, offer that stranger a chance to interview on a job. They tell you about their family, their salary, their mortgage, their kids, their sig other, and they get on a plane to Open Zipper, Iowa, and they interview on a job with a bunch of other strangers. They come home and say, yay, honey, we're moving. And you pull the kids out of school, and you move across the country for a 10% raise. If that's not crazy, and you think I'm crazy, first of all, before we go further, how about a round of applause for Mr. Schoenberg? And for you young guys and girls in the audience, that's the badass gangster who created this. So it's not that crazy when you think about it, and there's lots of evidence in the workplace today. So a little reference point on my bones in the business. How did I get into the business? I started in '89. I started with MR Suffolk, Sebastian Lavolsi. I then went to MR Woodbury. In my second year, they were partners. Bill Joes ran that office. And then I started my organization, MR Coral Gables, in 1992, January. Personally, I've been responsible for more than 30 million billing on my desk. My organization over 80. I still work a desk today. I still get up every day and I act like I'm broke while I watch my reasonably successful recruiters act like they're millionaires. And I love that. So what I'm sharing with you today is I'm down in the weeds. I'm tactical as well as strategic. So our firm, we've been at it for 27 years, 7,000 placements, about 25% of our business is OUS. This marketing strategy works OUS. Search has changed. And for those of you who study business, there's an S-curve model that covers business changes, social changes, tech changes. And what it does is, when a new tech is released, there's the birth of the tech, or the birth of a behavior. And then what happens next are the early adopters take that on. And once that growth occurs, it starts to mature a little bit. And then after that, there's a saturation rate, and things tend to flatten out. And because nature abhors vacuums, it comes up with another S-curve to follow up on it. And the search business is no different. If you started the search business in the 1980s, it was an outbound business. First of all, before I go any further, can you stand up if you started the business in the 80s or before? Could you just stand up? Nobody in here started the business in the 80s? 80s, 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 80s. Applause first. Give me applause there, and I'll tell you why. Todd and I remember the two tools we had was the telephone that was connected to a cord, and when mail came in, and you went to the front administrator desk, because that's when the resumes came in. There was not a fax machine. Those gangsters were able to set up in-person interviews without an interview, without a resume in hand, from a candidate presentation made to a hiring manager, and there was no internet to go on. You had a SIC code book, and there was a 4-code digit, and you looked it up, and it told you it was a valve company in Springfield, New Jersey with 200 employees. Go at it. And that was the way we did the business for the longest time. And then come the 90s, and things started to shift. We got Monster, resumes online, albeit 90% of them were unemployed. We got email, and we got the phone, and the phone started to change. But it was still an outbound business. But the friction was being reduced in the business now. And in the next period, this is really when it became the golden age of recruiting. LinkedIn came in, and for the first time you could put your resume online, and you wouldn't be called down to the HR's office, wondering why your resume was online. And that was a shooting gallery for us. And then when you started to add in LinkedIn, cellular phones, texting, email, but still an outbound business. Today, for the first time in the recruiting business, you can drive a majority of your business inbound, meaning individuals, I don't use the word candidates, individuals will be calling in on the things that you're working on. Companies will be calling in. Most of you call your business inbound as repeat business. When I refer to inbound business on the company side, I'm talking about a company that's never done business with you before, but because of your branding and your reputation building online, they pick up the phone, they call you or they email you and say, I have openings, I want you to work on them. Our business has gone 70% inbound from 70% outbound 4 years ago. In 2014, I hated LinkedIn. My head used to explode when my young recruiters, because I grew up in the business of take that phone, duct tape it to your head, give me 100 calls and give me 4 hours connect time. And then at the end of the day, we'd post them on the wall and you do the walk of shame, and we highlighted the people that did not break 4 hours. I grew up in a very tough household. Abuse equaled love. And so when we started to commit to LinkedIn and built our brand online over the last few years, we've got up to 33,000 followers now. That's just for the office. In aggregate, we've got over 80,000 followers when you take my top producers and put them all in. Now that's interesting, and there are some people out there going, so what? And I would too. Are those vanity metrics, Joe? This is where it gets interesting. Association, causation, I really don't care. The office billings went from 2.6 to 4 to 7 in relation to the building of a brand online. If you're a business owner, look at the PDA. There's a lot of business owners here that will add headcount, but it drives the PDA down in your organization. For those that you don't know what PDA is, it's per desk average. Your owner takes the number of desks in the office, divides it by the billing, and that is how you can tell it's one component of the health of your organization. So we not only built our brand, but we also tremendously increased billings, which gave us other tools to put into our portfolio. So why are we seeing this success? We're seeing this success because technology changes culture, which in turn changes modes of communication, which in turn changes and needs to change business processes. And for the most part, I would say that a majority of search firms are still doing business the way they did 2 to 3 decades ago. And you're wondering why the business is getting tougher, or organizations are beating you out. I don't think marketing is going to replace recruiters. I think recruiters who market are going to replace recruiters who don't. This stat makes Mike Bitar uncomfortable. This is the most popular online activities of adult internet users. You know where Mike's brain went on that. If you look at number 3, it's social platforms. For the balance of this presentation, for your own sake, I'm going to ask you not to think about social platforms with selfies and duck lip pictures that your nieces use. I'm going to ask you to think about social as the internet. And I'm going to help you, don't think about branding as reputation. So as you start to twitch and you're not interested in branding, go to reputation, and when you think of social, go to internet, and you'll be just fine. If you look at 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, and 4 are also activities that drive billings on your desk. If you can't read it, it says using email, using text messages, and watching videos online. Jumping into branding. Branding influences everything we do. It influences the car you drive, the house you live in, the sporting goods that you use, the shoes you put on your feet, the things you buy for your kids. Branding and marketing drive it all. We buy emotionally and we justify logically. You bought that Mercedes because of the way you wanted it to make you feel and you wanted to think about how others. Yet you justified it because it had a good maintenance program with everything you do. The watch on Bert's wrist is $22,000. My kid's $6 watch tells the same time, but Bert's tells it in 4 different countries. He doesn't have a $22,000 watch, don't worry about it. A couple of years. It's never been easier to build a brand right next to iconic brands than ever before. The internet, technology, and access allows you to cozy up alongside Mercedes, Louis, Rolls. You can develop your brand, and why is that important? Because we said in the beginning that it drives decision making. And you want people, if you're in Harvey, if you're in automation, and they're thinking automation, and they've never worked with Harvey before, but Harvey's brand's in front of them. Actually, I think it's Gary. Sorry, Harv. They think of automation, they're going to think of you before they've ever bought from you. You're influencing those. You can compete alongside iconic brands like never before. Again, brand equals reputation. Why don't we run marketing organizations right now as search firms? Because we don't reward that behavior. This morning we celebrated, and we should because we're a sales organization, we celebrated sales numbers. We celebrate pace setter. We celebrate bell ringing. And I get it, it's the lifeblood of what we do. But we've got to think about building marketing and brand. And marketing doesn't mean taking a candidate to the marketplace and pitching him or her, if anybody still does that. When we do our business plan, how do we start our business plan every year? We say next year, I want to bill $500,000. And then what do? Anybody? We do math. We figure out how many placements we made this year, divide it by the number of placements, find the average fee, figure out what the phone time was, how many send-outs. We celebrate the chipboard. Does anybody here still use a chipboard? Okay. So we're celebrating sales activities. How many people in here have a chipboard for articles written on LinkedIn? You have a chipboard for articles written on LinkedIn? Bam. Bam. Sit up here in the bottle section. I don't know what these couches are for. This is like the bottle section. How many people here have a chipboard for increased number of followers on LinkedIn in your industry? How many here? You do. Awesome. How many people here have a chipboard for engagement on a posting you put out with people in your industry and celebrate that? I love this. 3 for 3. I was expecting to go 0 for 3. I knew I loved my family. Do you get my point? What we reward is the behavior that we get. What we don't recognize or what we don't inspect is not what we get. Holding the past on a pedestal because you understand it and demonizing the future because you don't is one of the quickest ways to go out of business. Stop being romantic. On the walk over here, right before lunch, I was walking with an owner. I think she mentioned she bought her franchise in 1980. We started talking about how the business is shifting. She said she was looking forward to this talk. Her daughter's taken over the business. They're crushing it. They're putting up really great numbers. And she said, I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen moving forward with the leadership we have. I don't know anything about social. My daughter's 40, she knows all about it, but I don't know anything about it. And I'm looking to leadership and the organization for guidance. And so that's the power of this organization. There are a number of reasons you bought a franchise. Camaraderie, direction, no other choice, you were unemployed. Right? Most of us got into this in transition. But now you're looking for guidance. There aren't any other search organizations out there who are at least thinking about executing on this, let alone committed to it. And so when I hear somebody who's been in the business since 1980 fired up, and we talked about all the transitions that have occurred and they've adopted and carried through, I'm super excited for you about this. Because you're not going to look backwards. And if you're going to look backwards, it's fine. It's fine. You're just going to have a more difficult time in the business. So again, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, LinkedIn. I'm neither pro or con LinkedIn. It just happens to be the platform we're on today. It's the big gorilla in the room. What I am pro on is you start thinking like a media company who happens to be a search firm. You thinking like a media company who happens to do search. It's a shift in mindset that we went through. I used to be a recruiter. Not anymore. I build companies and careers. I used to be a search firm. Not any longer. I'm a media company who happens to do search, who builds companies and careers. It's not wordsmithing. It's a shift and change on how you're going to direct the people who come to work for you every day. And it's a very critical time and a transition in this entire industry, let alone the franchise of what you have to consider. Here's the good news. Promise. The phone still rules. It just comes in a different order than we're used to. It's no longer a phone-first business. You should not be counting on the phone for your initial engagement. You should look at these other tools in the marketplace available to you that are marketing, branding, texting, in-mail, reputation building, as catalysts and activators that will drive your business. Think of them as activators. It's not a phone-first business. All the important stuff happens on the phone, but we are not in a phone-first business any longer. How many people here, show of hands, would prefer, unless you're expecting the call, to get a text on their phone? instead of a phone call. And the rest of you are liars. So look, if you're going to be out of the business in the next 2 or 3 years by choice, you can go back to your Candy Crush game now. But if you're going to be in the business for the next few years, I think it's super important that you get your arms around where this business is going and digitally how to get into this business. Now let's talk about what digital is and digital isn't. Digital is not putting a whole bunch of postings online and hoping people call on them. That is not what it is. Quick story. I do consulting for some search firms, and I got a call from an owner in Florida who said, Joe, we're going through mid-year and we're deciding on our LinkedIn spend. I'm just not seeing the return on investment. I said, okay. He goes, and I see you use it like crazy. I see you've got tons of postings all over the place. We're just not seeing the ROI. And I think we've got 64 parking spots that we use in our firm. Those are those you buy and you can just keep on flipping them. And he said, I don't see it. I don't get it. And I said, Bob, let me explain it this way. And he's a big soccer fan. I said, a soccer ball at the foot of Ronaldo is different than the soccer ball at the foot of a 7-year-old. Same tool, different ROI. Don't blame the tool. The job postings, blasting things online that people think they're going digital on, is doing nothing but numbing the audience. And you're already running into this at an office desk level. How many of you are getting less and less valuable responses to your postings that you put online? Fair number of hands. And that's because people have become numb to it. That can't be your go-to move. What you need to do is develop a brand and a reputation online that creates a signal above the white noise that then has them lean into your postings. And I'm going to share some examples shortly. You want to decide via branding whether you're going to be an outbound business or you're going to be an inbound business. And my tenured people know the value of having a brand. Those out here who have been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years, you have a brand. You get call-in business. Now it's the call-in business from the people that you know, so it's a very small in relative terms to the world we live in, a very small circle of people. Worth $500,000 to $1 million to $2 million. That's cool. But I will tell you, you're leaving a lot on the table. And those tenured billers already know the reputation and the value of it. And then the poor person who's just starting, I saw a bunch of people, God bless you, who have been here less than a year. You're told to get on the phone, make 100 calls, 4 hours, wake up again, do it tomorrow. That's the way you're going to build your brand. That's the way you're going to make your business. And it's not wrong. Please listen to this closely. You still have to make 100 calls. You still have to be on the phone 4 hours a day. When you start to enact a reputation and brand building strategy, those things become amplified and accelerated. It does not replace. The market has decided already that this works. I don't have any magic. We have had 4 straight years, evidence-based, regardless of the market. I've done this for other firms, other search firms, and it works in various markets. I don't care if you're in manufacturing, cardboard, cannabis, pharmaceutical, it works. The market has blessed it, and all other behaviors are responding to it in every other aspect of our lives. Look, how come? Forever, search has been an analog business. One phone call, one point of contact, one point of influence, hang up the phone, do it again 50 times a day. That's what we do. We do it extraordinarily well. Digital, however, scales 24/7, 365, and the people that don't know you and you don't know them respond to your brand building and your marketing. Branding equals inbound. Inbound equals all A and B calls. All A and B calls equals speed to placement. It's the same equation for my tenured recruiters who are big billers. Why are we going to terrorize the newbies? And wouldn't you want to increase, if you're an owner and you've got $1 million biller in your office, he or she could be a $2.5 million biller with a little bit bigger of a team because you've taken their expertise and you scaled it out via messaging in the marketplace. After a while, your big billers get bored. Making money, after a while, especially for the people who gravitate towards this business who are givers, gets boring. You have higher retention in your office. You have more fulfillment on the floor. You create new hiring profiles that can come into the organization. And you allow your tenured rock stars to show off and amplify. Everybody wins on that one. Branding, though, on the other side has an ugly side to it. It amplifies, but it amplifies good and bad. You never want to sell, you never want to pitch in your branding. What you want to be is you want to be a gateway or a connector to your industry. That's what you want to think of. Think of it as increasing your reach in the marketplace. If I take, and I think Bert talked about it this morning, if I take an average search firm or an average business with phenomenal reach and put it up against a really good search firm in business who has little reach, the first one wins all the time. You take a great organization and increase great reach, you have market dominance. Branding basically does the homework for us. As a species, we are taught to be lazy. We want somebody to shortcut us to making decisions. Building a brand, showing off what you know in the market, making it a give, helps shortcut the decision-making process to the marketplace, to the individuals as well as the companies. Recommendation, inform, teach, and inspire when you put out content only. In our organization, what we say is give, and then be standing there in plain sight when somebody needs something. That's how we should live our lives, but I'll take it for that's how you should run your search firm. Give information, give insight, give tips, give knowledge, and they will remember you when they need something. You want to think about scaling from the analog, scaling to the digital. Okay, so let's get down into tactical stuff. Enough of my sermon, enough of my philosophy and thesis on this. When you get involved in building out your brand, you want to think of yourself and put yourself in one of these three buckets. You either want to be an original artist, you want to be a DJ, or I love me a Kiss cover band. You want to think of one of those three ways as a dominant approach. Whatever you do, you want to make sure with all your content, you decide what's valuable to the marketplace. You want to feature content for your current clients and your future clients and your past clients. And then you want to feature content that helps the individual determine where the proverbial career hockey puck is going to be 2 years from now by you connecting the dots in the business because you've been in it so long. So you eventually become an oracle to those individuals. One of my early trainers and mentors who was instrumental in my development was Gary Williams. And there was very little that I disagreed with what Gary talked about. But early in my career, Gary used the term, and he said, candidates are disposable, companies are not. And I never believed that, and it's less true today. When you can own the market from the candidate's perspective, companies come to you, because we live in a different world today. So the caveat of what Gary said was, we were living in an insulated world, but now we're living in a CNN world where everything is seen. And if you can put out information that individuals in the marketplace flock to you, keeping in mind that hiring managers are really candidates, and candidates are really hiring managers, and you start establishing that you know your stuff, companies will come to you because they know that you lead the market. So when you think about your content, think about that. So DJ, again, straightforward, spins what others have recorded. Don't even put their own voice on it. They do a nice job. They share articles that are relevant to the industry. The cover band. The cover band will take articles, podcasts, interpret them, and maybe take the 1,300 characters that LinkedIn lets you use, and you put your own interpretation of that, and what that means to the industry, or what that means to an individual in the industry, and to keep your eyes on it. So some examples in my organization that we use. So whenever we post something, we think of the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are market, product, leadership, mission. Every message we put together addresses those. What does the market, impartial third party say about this market? How does my client's product or service answer what the market is saying? Who are the people in that organization? Because who we hang around with is who we become. And what is the mission of that organization? So we try and check 2 boxes all the time. This is a very interesting platform we have, and I'm happy to chat about it with people. I haven't put it up for sale yet, and this is not a pitch, because you could build it yourself. But we in-house built a platform that scrapes everything every night in the medtech industry. It's an aggregator, and populates this page every morning in this fashion, just like this. And it's just like a HuffPost. And it allows us to be that one-stop shop. And since we've launched it, I think we have more than 500 people a week signing up for it. Connector, Gateway, Oracle. Original artist, this is the hardest. Original artist, you've got to be bold, fearless, respectful, smart, study, put in massive hours to build the content, but it's probably the most powerful way. Quick example, I never got close to getting to Harvard, trust me. But because of our influence in the marketplace, this is my 2nd time at Harvard, and if you look to the right, it says 2 of the most outspoken thought leaders in the medical device industry. Myself and Scott Hunnekens. This was just released, I think, Monday or Tuesday of this week. Harvard's got us back in again. That guy has transacted companies for billions of dollars in the medical device industry. And it's because of the content we're putting out. Influencing markets, just an article, 45,000 likes on it. Let's jump to this real quick because I want to get to Q&A. You have resources as an owner and as a desk. It's basically time and money. And if you want to be, and think about this as the restaurant rating thing where they put the dollar signs for most expensive, least expensive. This is the best way I could represent this to you. If you want to be a DJ cover band, you can go ahead on LinkedIn for just time, no money, very little time, follow clients and follow future clients, and every time an article comes out on them or somebody mentions them in an article, it'll come to your feed. You'll find out about it. You can then take that, flip it around, either share it, add value to it, but your client will then see it, especially if you add a hashtag, and you should be following hashtags in your industry. Every industry has trending hashtags. In the morning, I know a lot of executives who get up on LinkedIn and hit a hashtag to get their news of the day in their industry. And if you watch, you can figure out what they're doing. On the original artist, this is a big lift. personally on time. Big lift. But it also has the biggest return. Everybody with a single name is an original artist. Bono, Cher, everybody. It's hard. That's why there aren't many. It's a lot of time. You have to have talent. Original articles. When I first started, I've published over 100 articles on LinkedIn. I wouldn't do it again. I learned. Instead, I use the breadcrumbs. But I use that 100 articles to build credibility and get people's attention. The breadcrumbs are the 1,300 characters you get when you post a blog. Photos. Buy yourself a solid digital camera. Buy yourself Lightroom. Never use a stock photo. Get over the fact of taking a picture of yourself and using it on posting. Do not worry what people think about you, because eventually they're going to follow you. Be brave. Figure out what your brand and what your picture looks like. About a year and a half ago, I posted something on there, and some guy, because everybody wants to throw rocks at you, he's like, dude, I don't understand what the picture of you has to do with what you wrote. I'm like, sorry, dude, I wrote it. It's my picture. He went away. I felt sad for him. Video production, probably my last move I would do. I'm not a fan of iPhone videos. Doesn't mean they're right or wrong. I'm just not a fan of them. Video takes a lot of time, a lot of money. It would be my last move, but I still would plan on it and put it in my portfolio, just like a balanced stock portfolio. And I can share a lot with you about where we did well and where we didn't do with it. But it tends to be the big thing, but not sitting in the front of your car with your unclipped nasal hairs and having a conversation in the parking lot that you should have put a Leatherman on those hairs before you did the video. And then podcasts are some of my favorite, because you can put a camera or two cameras in the room, you know, a nice Sony HD. You can have a conversation, it's 30 to 40 minutes, and you can parse out multiple pieces, multiple clips, multiple sound bites out of that, and it demonstrates your experience in the marketplace. So before we go to Q&A, if there are any Q&A, you know, when I first sat down 4 years ago and started penning this, I love history. I study history. I study history because I don't think you can predict the future. But as Elon Musk said, you can be less wrong about the future. Let that settle in for a second. If you study history, you can't predict the future, but you can be less wrong. And what Vanderbilt did was he controlled the railroad. He had no interest in being in the timber business, the coal business, the chicken business, whatever, the cotton business. But he was going to own the damn rails that everything ran on. And I wanted to own the rails of everything that ran in the medical device industry, because media owns and rules everything. When there's a coup in a country, there's a reason they take the radio station over. They tell you what to think. We've lived our lives being told what to think. But if you use your superpowers with media for good, it's okay. Somebody like Vanderbilt, this was written a long time ago. He vastly improved and expanded infrastructure. He embraced new technology, and he helped create the 21st century. Those are inspirational words to me as a business builder. And what I would say to you is really consider going out of your way to own the rails of the industry that you're in. Thank you. I don't know if there's any Q&A, any questions at all? Sure, we have mics?
Yeah, I got a mic right here if anybody, I'll come over there.
And don't be shy, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. You've heard that before.
I've got a question over here.
Good job, Beth.
Hey Joe, Stacy.
Hi, Stace.
So my question is, this is something that evolved over the years, obviously. So picture a small office and then picture a growing office. Obviously, everybody in the office can participate, but to what degree are you using external resources, marketing firms, etc., or not, or hiring somebody full-time, part-time, or not? Can you walk us through that evolution?
Yeah, so do it yourself first, Stace. My team will tell you, I went out and hired 3 industry experts. One I fired the second day, one I fired about 2 weeks in, and the other one I forced him to quit. In fact, he wrote an article about me. It's lovely. It's on LinkedIn. And it's because they think conventionally. Stace, nobody knows your industry or the behavior of the people in your industry like you do. Nobody understands what the trigger points of influence are. And you can basically go on, and if you figured out the search business, the media business is quite easy to figure out. It's not very hard. And what you want to do is you want to, Stace, take Saturdays and Sundays, get out of the gym, you're looking good these days, and spend a little time learning the business. My guess is Bert and his team are going to put together a program that'll accelerate that for you, for the 2 to 4 desk office, the 4 to 12 desk office. And the other thing I would do, Stace, is the branding should be catered to the assets of the individual. I've seen your stuff online, I like it a lot. You're well spoken, you know your stuff, you're engaging. Billy Bob might not be that good. Billy Bob should maybe not ever get online. But you can do enough fishing for the entire organization. Those numbers, for the most part, Holly gets out there a little bit in my organization writing, and Gio does a little too. But those numbers are exclusively from me. And then all I do is feed everybody. So that's a little bit of an answer. I wouldn't hire people, Stace, because they don't know what they're doing. Because media, as it applies to search, is very different. And I'd be happy to chat with you in more detail about it. Yep.
Hey Joe, hi, it's Mickey Hampson.
Hi.
I really like what you said. It's fascinating stuff. But what you said about the breaking it down to DJ, cover band, or original artist, can one bounce back and forth between that, or do you have to pick a lane and stay in it?
100% bounce back and forth, but just pick one, right? My answer is pick one. Just know that the heavy lift is the original artist, and most original artists start out, like most original artists, by playing other people's music and finding their voice. And so find your voice and be true to the voice. So I think all of us start out probably as a cover band and a little DJ, but cover band, and then start to mature and get confidence and better. Here's the good news, everybody, in this room, right now, etch this in your brain. Everything you are great at today, you once sucked at. Put that in your brain. Next time you're worried about how you think you may look online, or when I first did this, my wife's friends came to her and said, "Is Joe okay?" And you know what? Most people would have quit because I took a lot of heat for the first year. Hope that helps.
Joe, we have another question over here.
Hi, Joe. One question I had was, it looks, you showed a lot on LinkedIn. Are you working across any other platforms? And if so, am I right in assuming that this began with you driving organic following, or was there any combination of organic and paid? And sorry for the long question, and if it is paid, do you use any tools to measure ROI, spend, et cetera?
So we don't do any paid, everything's organic. We do participate on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter, I know to stay off of. If you watched what happened to Elon, I just can't help myself. So I would say I fish where the fish are. Right now it's LinkedIn. I think it has the largest influence in no matter what you're doing. Now, if I was in a business like in food and beverage, and some other more commercial facing, I'd probably put a little more lift into Instagram. And we just started, if you haven't seen our docu-series yet, called True Future, write it down, truefuture.tv. My ask of you today for what I gave you in return is be a follower of truefuture.tv on LinkedIn, check it out. It's a lot of fun, but we just started doing paid on that recently.
Right here.
Hey Joe,
Hey.
Brian from Winona.
What's up, Brian?
Hey, I love that you're posting content from the DJ perspective of your clients and potential clients. But I'm curious if you have any measures in place to ensure that individuals are going to go through you then and not directly to the company.
No. And why would that? Yeah, so the answer is no. I never worry about what somebody's going to do behind my back, because then I pull my punches. And the blessings that we've got at scale by not worrying. It's the same way when you call somebody on the phone, again, on that analog function, you trust, you give the company name right away. And so we go out there. And I'm sure that there's been dozens of placements, I'm positive of it, that if not but for, and I'm okay with that.
Joe, we have a question over here.
Hey Joe, it's Krista Whiting with Parkwood International. In terms of the content that you post, what do you find generates the most views? Is it videos? Is it text? Just sharing industry insight, connecting with your audience? What's your views on that?
Pictures of Vicky in the shower get the most. After that, I think, so what we've noticed is, it's interesting, at least on my feed, I've started to grow a very, very aggressive following from my inspirational, aspirational stuff. If you don't follow me, you can check it out. And I would say though that I'm a dominant player in the surgical robotics imaging navigation world of medtech, and also digital and AI. So what I will do is I will take transactions that occur in the marketplace and say, this is what this probably means. And if A and B are equal to each other, C and D are, so keep an eye out for this. And I make these sort of pretty aggressive assumptions, and there's a lot of engagement there. So it goes both ways. Some of it is where I think the market's going, and then some of it is the inspirational, aspirational stuff. Anybody else? Oh.
My question is, as you shifted your firm's focus to thinking like a media company, how did you advise them to manage their time? It'd be very easy to just all of a sudden stop making any phone calls and just start writing blogs, and that'd be great and everything, but you have to find that balance. What was your advice?
Yeah, so here's the answer. It's and. It's not or. And I'm not going to suggest this to anybody in here, but I have added 20 hours to my 55-hour a week on content alone. A few of my people have added about 5 to 7 hours on their content. And so it's and. And then we are now starting to institute a coaching in the office. By the way, we have 15, 16 desks, I think. Not everybody is allowed to post. Because like I said in the presentation, it amplifies good and bad. And I've had some things that want to go out. So I make sure I stand guard at that without suffocating the person. It's a very tight dance. But it's an and my recommendation is you get coaching on how and what you should put out. But the easy thing to do is to be the DJ and just share a whole bunch of stuff and start making baby comments on that.
And Joe, we have a question here.
Sure.
Hey, Joe, here. Andres with Ace Talent.
Hi, Andres.
Great. So real quick, I've read that, and this might be really tactical, but I've read that content coming from individuals tends to garner a lot more attention, a lot more reactions than content coming from the business. Making the best use of time, where do you recommend that, I personally invest the time, the business or my personal brand?
Personal brand. So we are also developing branding for our companies, and especially on the LinkedIn platform, the algorithm serves the individual, not the company. So that's number one. It gets processed entirely differently. So that's one, and it should be a blend. The second is that you never know who you're going to become, and you can't take your company with you. So you might be, I never knew when I started this 4 years ago, we were going to have a docu-series. We were going to have 2 other media companies spin out of this. And if I just branded it as TMG, it wouldn't be that. And so I would say spend it on yourself, and then figure out a cadence for the company. You'll know it.
And one more question here.
Yep.
Joe, Mark Anga, great stuff.
Thank you.
I loved how you put the articles about prospective clients.
Yeah.
You didn't have job orders with them yet. Did you have to get any form of approval from them, or just do it on your own?
No, you don't need approval. They're putting it out in the public domain already on LinkedIn. So if they want it on LinkedIn, and they're putting it out there for amplification, and I have a bigger rail, I'm doing them a favor. And so what we do is every quarter we identify the 20 companies we want to work with, and we start getting content, and sharing it. And then their executives are, WTF? Why is this guy putting our stuff out there? And then they start to follow you. And then they call you after they watch you.
And we have another question on this side.
Go ahead.
Last one over there, Beth, thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, before the conference, I knew nothing about you, but I looked you up before, and I was very impressed with the video content that you produced.
Thank you.
And the approach.
Thank you.
I had a knee-jerk reaction. I went on Amazon and bought a gimbal. I said, I got to do something. You just mentioned a Lightroom. What is that?
Lightroom is software that you can post-process pictures. It's a, Icky, who owns it? Adobe. So Adobe has that portfolio. It's Lightroom. You can get a subscription. It's great. It's easy to use. Super easy to use. They have this thing called Google. You can look up how to use it. Good. I think we're out of time. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Dude, right on.
Thanks.
There you go,
Thanks.
baby.